So we're in Satisfying Cactus, Sprint 1. The sprint is going to span 3 weeks. I think in the discussions, what we had determined is that the priority is making sure that the Ecord and MCORD use cases get moved over to the 4.0 release, which has recently come out. So congratulations to the team. And then we will start planning. But what you'll see in terms of how we're setting up Jira is we essentially have a generic sprint 1. We've got sprints for the brigades, containers, and performance, and then the focus would be around Ecord migration, MCORD migration, and there will be some work to look at a test framework. So we'll go over each of those. So let's start off with sprint 1. I think if I look at kind of epics, what we're focused on is work around BBWF. Okay, so what I can do is get us to those epics, and then this way it's filtered. Okay, let's start off with preparation for BBWF.
Yeah, I put a few stories in that pertain to the work we need to do this week before we ship the hardware. So the first is bring up the EdgeCore LT on the BBWF pods that we're going to ship. Shadow's working on that right now, so I sent that one to him. The second is bring up the OLT controller and configure the apps to do what we need to do for passing traffic through the OLT. The third is we need to test at least once bringing the pod back up from power off. At least it's probably changed a lot since I last did it a year ago, so we need to figure out what's the best practice there. And Scott had a task that he put in here.
Yeah, the last one is verifying all of the CORD features such as CDN parental control, VTR suspension, that all of those work. And as part of that, determination of whether we'll even attempt to do the CDN. I think there's certainly some drawbacks in attempting to do that as part of a demo, considering that it's not open source software. Yeah,
and actually, I think the parental control is a more compelling demo anyway. We've found it difficult to kind of have the CDN really working. It doesn't really demo that well, so I would focus on the parental control more than the CDN.
Yeah, I'm all for that, and I will. I'll make a focus on the parental control, and if we'd like to write off the CDN as something we will definitely not consider, I'm happy to make that distinction right now.
Let me talk with Sarah this afternoon, and we'll get back to you on that.
Sounds good.
Note I verified that VTR is working last week.
Yeah.
So for 1970, the third story, it would be great if you find anything, if you can put on the other stories in Jira.
I see there is some documentation on how to do it.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of
in case
verifying it
accordingly, if you can.
Yeah.
Or at least write Google Docs with the script to bring it up, and so we know next what to improve.
Okay, so can we add some documentation tasks to the story? And then for 1955, when do we need that by? So just from a timing standpoint, so Scott is aware, do we need that in place by a specific time?
Yeah, so I guess if we need to install something on the hardware that we're going to ship, then the final cutoff point is Friday this week.
Friday.
Yeah, let me prioritize. I'll make that my highest priority since it's the soonest thing coming due.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Yes, and changes in priorities would be great. Looks like everything's at medium.
So one of the things that I notice is that there's no CORD build related stuff. Is that because that's got its own sprint?
It's a different epic.
Epic. Okay.
but I noticed there is nothing in Sprint 1 either. So do we feel like it's too far out and there's no work starting on that?
That was my question. I think it would benefit us to just really focus on Ecord and MCORD and not get distracted too much by CORD build stuff. But at the same time, I feel like maybe we can't let that completely slide. So I don't know how to balance that.
Yeah, so the gotcha keep in mind is this sprint goes through the 20th, and then CORD build is going to be early November. So
Yep.
if there is any preparation work that needs to be in place for that, those probably need to start trickling into this sprint. Because the next sprint is really only 2 weeks, right, before ONOS build.
Right. CORD build, yeah.
I mean, sorry, CORD build. So
yeah.
Can you guys, is Larry on?
Yeah, I'm here now.
Okay, good.
Okay, so has it been identified in terms of everything that needs to be done for CORD build in terms of demos and presentations? So do we at least need to have a story in here that kind of finalizes?
So we have I think that story is mostly done. So there is a document that everyone who is on the hook to present something is adding material, like an abstract and an outline. So the work's been scoped, if that was a question.
Okay, and then is there anything that needs to be done within Sprint 1 to prepare for that?
The only absolute requirement is to get the abstracts out of people.
Right, so abstract and outline for every session. Does that seem like?
I think if we had minimally that, if we had that, it would be okay.
Okay. So we'll need to add those.
I don't know if those rise to the level of a story. There's most of the outline. I'm sorry, maybe it does for each of you. Sorry.
We should, just because it takes time and this way people can account for it.
Yep.
Yeah, even if it's only 1 point, I'd like to see it in there.
Yeah.
Yep, thanks.
So Andy?
Yep.
Are you doing that?
Sure, I can put those in.
Okay, and then other things I saw within Sprint 1 was around fabric. So we'll go with that.
So the first one is to add the ability to do dynamic interface config, and John Wayne is working on that. And also the second one, and the third one is actually together, is to add the ability to plug and report into an app, and Simon is working on that. And then the fourth one is just a minor task to upgrade our environment to the latest version.
So, question on the side, we were discussing that I can't remember the name. Sorry, the new guy, the new Greek guy that's working with us. Andreas. Thanks. Sorry, Andreas. Could start tackling the problem that Ecord is facing to use the fabric.
Yeah, that's a while, right?
So yeah, so that's a long-term job as far as I understood, is due by like December, but because I think it's a long job. So my question is there something we should put here for that?
We're going to have a discussion tomorrow, and hopefully we will have some more specific story coming out from that discussion. But right now, there's so yeah, that's all about this one. And then we move to the next one, dual homing. So we deliver a version of dual homing to in 1.11.1 release like 2 weeks ago. And then these are several issues, known issues we have right now. So we also plan to spend some time to investigate those issues. Some of them are not very trivial. That we probably have to work with Procom. And then so these are just several known issues. Yeah. And then moving to that's all. And moving to next one, the DOTP relay. If we need to refresh this. Okay, do you want to give it up?
So the several bug fix is under review, but lot of patch is under review. Then not much
Okay. Yeah, so I think most of the tests are under review, yeah. And then we also there's new kind of requests coming in about these query. We're going to have a discussion with Comcast and Harmonic probably next week. So more details is coming soon. And then yeah, I think that's it about GCP relays. And then for multicast, we discovered 2 issues recently, and then we also plan to address those in the sprint. And this will be we'll get help from Nokia folks. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Charles. So let's see what else. Okay. Okay. We'll look at deployments and build.
Yeah, so I'll start. I'll start tonight to work with the entity guys to deploy an Ecord pod in Okinawa Open Lab. Hopefully, we will be able to use it soon for tests as well. And then it's been quite a long time that we talked to the Intel guys to automate their pod deployment here at the lab. I would consider it lower priority compared to other things to do. And so I put minor there for now. Then we will see. More or less, that's it. There are a few other bugs to fix here and there, but that's a daily thing. I mean, it's not really a story. So these are the 2 big ones.
Okay. So I see onboard Ecord, MCORD, RCORD to 4.0. Any reason why it's in this sprint?
These were some things that I wanted to improve that will make it so that there's less manual fiddliness with the build system. I've been meaning to do this for a while. This sort of goes on to the Ecord. This should probably be an Ecord, not that Epic.
Yes, we also have a couple of sprints down here. Okay, so you'll move them?
Yeah, I'll move those.
Okay, and then we'll cover QA coverage.
Okay, for QA, first story is about adding some configuration procedures for the pods into the Jenkins script. There are still few more that are pending, so we plan to finish that. And the next 2 stories are regarding Volta, and these are worked by Sienna. And 1962 is preparing sanity tests for XOS API in MCORD. So we need to discuss with MCORD team and then finalize some of the API tests that are required from XOS side, and then we plan to add them for the MCORD, and then also integrate it as part of the Jenkins jobs. And 1964 is creating some post-installation verification steps, which we already started as part of 4.0. And there are still a few more things which are pending that we want to add as part of the CORD, and plan to finish that. And the next two tasks or stories are about creating Jenkins-based jobs for Ecord and MCORD profiles. These are basically Jenkins jobs for checking the commits on the repo. So we need to talk to the Ecord and MCORD primes and then see how we go about these. So these are the tasks from KSI.
Okay, thanks, Suchitra. And I think the only thing we've got is maintenance. Scott?
Yeah, so I have a minor bug that I found this morning, and I think I've already fixed it. So that bug has to do with an exception that was thrown by the VNAAS synchronizer. And the issue there is that the exception that is thrown has a message, which in turn is another exception object, and that needed to be converted to a string. So I'm testing a patch for that now.
Okay. So we'll move on to the other sprints. I don't see containers or performance, so do we know if anything is going on with those two?
So for containers, I'm basically discussing with Larry and Andy. I'll probably reach out to a few others, but in general, because MCORD and Ecord are the top priorities, I'm going to set these as low priorities, but one of the top priorities in the container space is to install Kubernetes on the head node and the compute nodes and install OpenStack as Docker containers using Kubernetes. I'll be working on that again as a lower priority based on what my tasks are for the MCORD integration with 4.0. I think I just added it to the sprint. Maybe if you refresh it, you should be able to see it. It's 17:30.
Yeah. Sorry. Never mind. I'll wait till you're finished with that.
I'm done.
So I know that you're talking, or I think I saw an email that you're talking to 99 Cloud next week. Everyone is out this week, but is that right?
Yes. Yeah. I think the entire team is on vacation this week. Yes.
Right.
Tuesday next week. Yeah.
Okay. Good. So we'll get them on the TST list too, because I want them to introduction to everybody. But on one of the requirements, I guess requirements on Ecord is not just that we get it integrated, but that we can bring it up in China, because China Mobile is one of the biggest Ecord clients right now. And that then touches, of course, on the entire build process and what does and doesn't work in China. Getting container-based build was high priority on that. 99 Cloud was going to help. As you can see, everything is linked to everything else. It's hard to tease them apart. So I don't. It could turn out. I'm just warning everybody that we need to figure out how to not only get Ecord integrated, but how to get it brought up in China. So I'll just leave it at that for right now. And yeah, so these things might be related. Yeah.
So I was looking at the shared document on China Mobile, and I think with some tricks, it won't be perfect, but with some tricks, we may be still in a better position than before, because some of the things have been fixed with 4.0, some of the stuff is not optimized, but still we know how to make it work. So I'm thinking we could give to them what we do for everybody, plus now we know what was wrong and we know how to fix it manually. And then, you know, hopefully by December, I hope, we can put also all this optimization in place and could work better.
Yeah. So I would be totally shocked if we got the container thing in there before the December. What they would like to do, which I know is not going to be news to everybody, and it was news to me over the weekend, is that there is pressure to make it possible for China Mobile to bring up Ecord locally before the CORD Build event, so they can come to CORD Build and talk about it.
Right. Yeah. So that's what I was talking about. And for optimization, I was referring to containers now, right?
Okay. So you think that
thing to do in the long term, but I was saying, like, I don't know. A very trivial example is like instead of google.com for the thing, put opennetworking.org or whatever, set the right DNS. Now we have to set it in 1,000 places. They will do a grep the char and they will put it in 1,000 places at the beginning. Then the optimization will be make the fix to let them put it in one place and we configure it for them. But we know what to touch at least, I think. So there might be the chance it's going to be a little bit tricky, but it could work anyway.
So yeah, so that's good, and yeah, so your observation that we don't have to wait on the containers is helpful. It would be ideal if, well, one option here is that we get 99 Cloud to quote unquote debug this process before we go back to China Mobile. So if they can bring up 4.0, then that would be a sign that China Mobile can bring up 4.0 and or 99 Cloud could help them bring up 4.0 without our holding their hand.
Yeah, so in any case, I agree with you, Larry. This might turn out to be a pretty big deal. So I'm trying to pace this. I'll obviously have to work with Andy and Zach very closely in the short term to try and see if I can bring in an orchestrator with minimal disruption. I'll obviously be working on a branch. I'll probably also need some help. When I talked to Andy last week, it felt like there can be, like you say, a symbiotic relationship between what we are doing for Ecord and MCORD and what we are doing for containers, because containers might turn out to be a long-term solution for many of the problems we are facing, like Luca just mentioned. So yeah, priority-wise, do everything we can to get MCORD and Ecord up before December. And in that process, if I can start working on some long-term vision-based goals for containers, I'll be working on that.
Right. And the only footnote I would add to that summary is integrating Ecord and making it possible for China Mobile to bring it up. Kind of have been coupled for us.
Larry, I have one thing to add here. I think it's a bit premature to assume that 99 Cloud will be able to help China Mobile in such a short time span. They themselves, I believe, are starting from scratch with the CORD platform, right? So,
well, that's a great point. I'm banking on them already making progress, but it would be good to hear how much. I think Andy
eventually, but I don't think before the end of the year we can really assume they have the expertise and the skill set to help other people with CORD.
Yeah, you're probably right. Well, maybe they can help us help other people.
Yeah. So Mark, I'm just as skeptical as you are, but they did come in with a lot of enthusiasm. So I want to kind of keep that up. I do agree that
I don't want to. I just want to be realistic here. I don't want to hold them back or anything like that. None of that.
I know, and I'm just as skeptical. But what I want to do is I want to build on a longer term vision based on what we decided as a team is the right direction for containerization.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Total sense. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Just one clarification. Because I heard two deadlines for Ecord, CORD Build and December. Which one is the right one?
CORD Build.
Yes.
Before anyone answers, CORD Build, please.
Before CORD Build.
Before CORD Build. So
deployed the,
just because we say to be concrete, to even be more concrete, so we have to decide what is going to happen in which is the point of this meeting, right? To decide what is going to happen in this sprint. So the expectation, if we want to have the chance to deploy Ecord in China Mobile before ONOS Build, I think realistically we need a week for that.
yeah. Okay. So end of this sprint.
End of this sprint,
we need to have
Ecord must work. That's what it means.
I agree.
So I will say that containerization is out of the game. Because we are talking 3 weeks for now.
But I'm also hearing we may need to bring in some of the offline limited access Epic.
Wait, what?
To bring in some of the offline.
That's the Epic for China Mobile related things.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying, right? I don't think that we cannot install it at all. I don't know, other guys can correct me, or we can take it offline since this meeting is another thing, but I don't think we need containers or offline stuff necessarily to deploy Ecord in China Mobile.
Yeah,
I think
and that's right. We definitely will not need it in the short term. And like I mentioned, this is lower priority. We have decided to work as swarms and pair programming. Obviously, if it takes up all of our time, then it takes up all of our time for MCORD and Ecord. If that's not the case, then the lower priorities items do get worked on. I don't think there is any debate about that.
Right, and coming back to Luca's point, we don't have to decide today, but we need, so basically the ask as of this moment is that we can give a seam, a solid story to tell China Mobile next Monday when they're back at work. And so we got the rest of this week to figure out how close we are with Ecord. If we discover after a week that it's not so bad, then we can have a positive outcome. If it's look harder, we need to be, just make our judgment on that. And I think that we, now that we've established the communication channels, it's not like they have to do it blind. We can still help them. And if Luke is right, then that's probably the right path, that with just a little nudge here and there, they can bring it up with our help. And we don't have to fly to China to do it, I think is the only requirement.
So I'm hearing a few things. One is that we need to get Ecord migrated by or before CORD Build. And then the other one is we need to support China Mobile to get their pod running in China before CORD Build.
Yep, that's right.
And the running in China before CORD Build, we don't think there is anything that needs to be done in terms of the offline Epic, that it can all be done manually.
Can you show us offline? I'm not quite sure.
I would like to have a lot of the things in the offline Epic done. I think that a lot of those got maybe put off because of we were just preparing for release. But now that we're past that, we can prep them for 4.1.
We decided not to prioritize those, right? Because they were lower priority than the migration work. So I think that's the question I have now is, are they still lower priority than the migration work? Or because of this ask, do we need to raise the priorities of some of those?
Do we consider them to be part of the prep for CORD Build that we need to do anyway now?
Initially, when we were talking about it, no. Part of the preparation for CORD Build was all focused around like documentation, getting presentations, and all those in place.
So I would say these have to be lower than the integration work, because until that is done, we don't have anything to deploy. But still, I guess, so they're lower priority, but still I guess they maybe need to happen in this sprint if we need them to do the week of actually setting up the pod in China Mobile.
Sorry, Ian, can you go back on the offline stuff, please? Just very quickly. I want to see. Okay, so The fact that I'm mentioning this because I think this determines if they are like blocking or not to deploy, right? Like VSG should pull Docker images from local repo. As long as you change manually the local repo, you don't need this, right, to deploy. Allow setting upstream DNS servers, as long as you change the DNS servers manually. I know it's a pain, I'm not saying it's not, but it's not mandatory to do. Pod test pings Google DNS for test. I think this has been done already by Zach, or not, Zach? I think it's already merged, right?
I was actually going to make it parameterized, but yes, there's a patch in flight for that.
Okay. And then Google DNS are coded in OpenStack synchronized. It's not good, it's not nice, but it's a nice to have, but it's not mandatory. We just changed the DNS. And then Maven repo, we know what Maven repo to use. It's not mandatory. We just change it. And they know how to do all these, by the way, right? Already. They went through this already. And then allow the use of non-Docker app global registry mirror. We know, and they know how to change it, and we just have to change it.
There is also the NPM registry.
We can, yes, we can add the NPM registry for the GUI.
I can add it. I didn't put it there. Last week it wasn't a priority.
So I just said all this because I don't believe I don't know what Mark means before, I don't know. Indeed, there were many things we went through the deployment. Who knows what changed now with the new build system, right? But for these specific stories, I don't think they are blocking for the deployment. They're all nice to have.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is Ecord migration. That's really the main thing, and some sort of support story maybe. Because I assume a portion of someone's time is going to be working with China Mobile to get that going.
Well, yeah.
So it would really help if we had like acceptance criteria for Ecord migration, because the state we're in now is that we can bring up the virtual profiles, but I have a feeling that more service implementation stuff needs to be done. I guess it'd be nice to know what, you know, the end-to-end behavior that we need to support is to consider Ecord migration done.
Do we have a definition of done for the epic? Or the stories? I think we had said that there's a few things we want, right? We want to make sure that there's testing associated with the stories, there's documentation associated with the stories. That's the kind of new development model we're moving towards. So I don't know if those are added.
That's not what I'm trying to point out. I'm trying to point out is, you know, what exactly is the service stack that we're supporting and the features that Ecord needs to support. You know, there's... When is it feature done? Yeah, what is feature done, not what is, you know, unit testing and documentation and that stuff.
And we listed out the set of services that needed to be migrated also, right, as part of the discussions.
Yeah, the set of services and, you know, the end-to-end behavior, you know, what is the expected demo one would run of Ecord that proves it's done? You know, do you bring up a subscriber and network as a service, and that is, you know, done if you can do that? Or
do you want me to talk through this now, or do you want this
I think that you can bring this offline in between the Ecord team.
Yeah, if we could just have like a description in the integration channel of just what our done criteria is.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And if you guys can document it as part of the epic definition of done, that would help. So whether it's broken down into kind of the story level or captured at the epic, it needs to be documented, right, before we close out the epic itself. Okay?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so what I heard was Ecord migration. We didn't need to do anything in the offline epic. So we'll move on to what the Ecord migration stories would look like. for sprint 1. And strangely enough, I'm in the epic, but I don't see it, so something's strange.
I think there's 2 different Ecord epics, maybe.
Okay. So it looks like under Ecord migration, we have a bunch of things tagged with the Ecord epic. And then we have nothing in the onboard, except for the 2, I think, that was under the other sprint that I think Zach was moving over.
I moved those over, so there shouldn't be anything in here. No, don't see them. Oh, I might not have moved them to the Ecord migration portion of the, okay.
Yeah, you need to move them to that sprint.
Yeah, too many sprints and epics.
So I think the model we want to follow is all the work that is needed to migrate Ecord to 4.0 needs to go into the Ecord migration sprint. All the work needed to migrate MCORD goes into the MCORD migration sprint. And then this tracks the progress, or this allows the team itself to track the progress of the work that is needed to be done at a more granular level. Okay, and then so I think a question here then is, are we capturing, so in order to close out each story, do we have test and documentation requirements?
Documentation requirement? So you are saying that it goes story by story?
If it makes sense for each of the story, yes. I see that there's an Ecord installation guide.
And there's another task for documentation as well. 1950.
Okay, documentation for Ecord.
And tests are not explicitly captured. And frankly, if you know, we have 3 weeks for, I don't know how far we can take this. I made the same point last week, where it's like, yeah, release, but do all the tests as well. I'm not quite sure we can take all of that on in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, so I don't promise anything, but I'm trying both for Ecord and MCORD to take the documentation story, because really help also me to have like a global point of view of the use case. So hopefully I can start to understand really also how to deploy it and use it, right? So in a best effort, let's say, which means basically nothing, but I'm in favor of taking over these stories. The installation guide, both for Ecord and MCORD, I'm the one that put those stories in, and I assigned them to me, of course. I mean, if you give me some architecture guide and we spend at least 1 hour together, no more, I think I can put down a decent base, hopefully. And then, you know, we can always improve, right? But at least you have something there.
So can we clarify, sorry, Luca, can we clarify what documentation for Ecord means versus write Ecord installation guide? Is this documentation of each of the services?
So there is now a per service profile section of the guide. It has a minimal set of information for CORD. So if we met that, we would be as good as CORD. It does not include in-depth information about each service, but a little, but that's partly because for CORD, those services have been described elsewhere. So minimally what's on the guide for CORD, duplicate for Ecord and MCORD.
So are we agreeing that we won't close out the epic until this is in place, or do we feel like we want to tackle this at a more granular level, so as each service is being migrated over, the information would be captured on a service per service level? I think in our discussions before, we had talked about a more granular per story, and so are we switching to per epic?
Well, I don't know. Is it really that important?
Yeah, I mean, the granularity of the documentation is closer to all of Ecord, not per service. So I would say per epic in that particular case. But back to Mark's original point, maybe we don't officially call it a 4.1 release. Maybe it's an alpha. Maybe it's just we point some folks in China at something. What we're giving them at in 3 weeks, fully meeting all of our new definitions of done is going to be a pretty tall order.
So guys, I'm sure for documentation, I can cover some stuff, and if you look at the Ecord page, it's like half page with 10 links. I'm sure we can do it. I can take and do it at least in 3 weeks. Very small but understandable user guide, and put like at least a diagram of the services there with the general overview. If you want, I can add it also to the story, and again, the story is assigned to me. So I think that's what I can personally commit.
Let's try to do it for the whole epic. I think to your question of granularity, that's the best we can do right now.
Okay. Then I think the only other comment was maybe we do a bit more prioritization in terms of the tests. And then CORD migration.
So I can start with my 3 points. I'm starting a document with the requirements for the release and what we need to do at an higher level. But personally, I will start defining a model to host a mobile CORD subscriber. I'll have to do some work on the GUI to support the service graph in ENCORD, and I'll work on migrating the BBW service from 3.0 to 4.0. And probably after a discussion this morning with us, the BBW service has also to be renamed in ONB, but that's a detail.
Okay, so I will start 2 stories. First one is 1972. In this work, I will migrate the virtual EPC service from CORD 3.0 to 4.1. After that, I will start 1985, which is to configure the virtual BBU, which is one of the components in CORD, by using the playbook. That's what I want.
Raphael?
Yeah, hi. So I volunteered to take this issue because, actually, just to give you some background, so at Samsung, before the Intel EPC became publicly available, we kind of went our own independent route, and we're interested in integrating this open air interface, open source EPC stack. And so I've already kind of gone ahead and created an Ansible playbook to configure those VNF VMs once they're booted up. So I'm somewhat familiar with that process, although I maybe don't know what I'm getting myself into because I have no familiarity with the Intel EPC. So I'm going to work with Ping and others to understand that process, but hopefully, yeah, I should be able to handle the MME, potentially other EPC VNFs as well. Getting those configured through Ansible. What was that?
I think a way
write down the playbook first, and this Wednesday you already know a shop will come here, give us a tutorial, you know before to configure it, then we write down the playbook. After that, I think a shop will help us to testing, entire EPC testing.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're interested in using the Intel EPC now that's come out, that's been released. But I just have no background with that, so.
Yeah, a shop will give us a tutorial on Wednesday. You will come here.
Okay, that would be great.
And the rest is mine. So my task will, the first one will move MME to 4.1. And after I build all the images, I will update the images in the MCOD YAML file. And so Oma left some work on the controller and the DP, these two VMs. So I will finish the Ansible playbook for these two services. And oh, okay, because the cursor over there. And for our team bring back a China Mobile EZOB. I need to continue the testing. The China Mobile EZOB for them for this break. Okay, and the rest is from our community, so I report for them. Sai from Intel, he will build the proper Intel EPC images for us. And Yunpeng will work on, so those days if we work on build 4.0 or 4.1, you need to modify two files in the for the calling box. So we want to delete the manual config. So just use -p mcode, -project mcode, then build the calling box directly. So we need to update there. And to move the SPVC and the SPVU from 3.0 to 4.0 will be done by Jian Hao from Taiwan and his team. And then a shock from Intel will help us with the EPC testing on MCOD environment. And then, of course, also will check whether what's the status of the MME, whether should we use the new MME or just a simulator there. And for documentation and installation, Luca will help us. In the documentation, all people will need to contribute the material to the documentation engine. Okay. I don't know what's yeah. And then after this, I don't know whether we can finish the last two or not. I think the whole sum from KVM will need to test their run with Intel EPC, whether they can work together. I think I'm thinking for the code build, should we use, I guess, if the KVM run works, maybe we should use the footpod to show them. I'm not sure. I don't know the Ecord or MCOD, code box or footpod to show them.
I don't know. Are we showing demos? But are we showing demos at CORD Build?
You will not show demos?
I don't know. Are you going to show a demo?
Nobody asked me to prepare a demo.
And you know that the request will come.
Yeah. So I'm not sure about this. But for this, I'm not sure because if we want to attach the phone, so if you want to use the phone to show maybe the keyboard, we just show the Intel EPC the calling box is enough. So we need to think about it. I'm not sure it's content. Okay, I just put it here. Okay, that's done.
Ping, can I ask you to clarify for me the MME configuration? This is not the real MME as you're calling it. This is the NG4T.
Oh, we haven't decided the task 1978. Also, we will check the status. If the real MME is ready, we will configure the real MME. If the real MME is not ready, then we will use the emulator.
I see. I think I can only really justify my working on the real MME because I kind of have to have some justification for things I'm working on that, even though I'm contributing to MCORD.
Okay,
If any of my superiors ask me, why am I doing this? You know, because we are not interested in the NG4T for our project. So. Just to let you know.
Yeah, no problem. You need to ask the status first.
So I also have an additional question. I thought that the XOS team was forming on this migration work also. Wasn't there other work that needed to be done as part of the migration? Or is this it?
So, okay, so this is Andy. So I am one of the swarm members on this. I think it's fair to say that I don't maybe have a good enough understanding yet of exactly where we're trying to get to and how I can best contribute. So I guess based on my experience, I would think that maybe you know, I could help with, say, getting MCORD in a box working, and you know, maybe get some tests going on that, so we could use that to validate the ongoing work. But yeah, it's not clear. Okay, MCORD in a box build is already there. Cool. But it's maybe not clear to me. So who owns that?
Today we just started the testing, the 4.0 of course works. For the 4.1, today we test it as a field, so we need to spend the reason and fix it.
So maybe there needs to be a meeting with Ping Ping and the XOS team to figure out what's covered and what isn't?
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe there was an initial meeting last Friday, which unfortunately I missed because I was traveling. But I think there should be some regular meeting scheduled with that we can make sure that we're providing the support that is needed.
Yeah, so Theo scheduled another meeting for Wednesday this week, specifically with the Intel team. I am also a part of the Swarm team for MCORD, and like Andy, I'm trying to find a place where I can best fit. What I have been contemplating is Ping Ping has shared some documentation around the MCORD build for 3.0. I'll be going through that, but more importantly, since I'm co-located with Theo and Ping Ping, I'll likely swarm with at least one of the services that they're working on for migration, specifically peer programming, either with Theo or with Ping Ping, helping with testing that stuff, and maybe even a little bit of documentation. At least that's my initial thought. I'm pretty sure as we go through this sprint this week for the next 3 weeks, we'll come up with a few minor subtasks. I wouldn't say minor, a few subtasks, and I'll be able to bid into that.
And please, as soon as you guys understand how things really work, I mean, I know there are lots of presentation and quite high-level architectural stuff around that can be part of the documentation. But as soon as you understand how the system will look like, essentially, concretely, please put it in the doc that Theo shared, because likely that will be transformed into the documentation, right? And I don't think it's a big effort to write. You don't have to write things nicely. I will take care of cosmetic stuff. Who cares? The important thing is that concepts are there and everyone can understand it.
Yeah, I think we'll need to use that document also to perfectly understand what we have to do.
Right, exactly.
It's still a bit foggy, but
yeah,
it's getting clear.
Yeah,
hopefully.
Yeah, and of course, just a thought, right? I see that Mateo has 3 stories, so our concept of swarming would be theoretically anyone could help out with these things. So just a thought in terms of, it feels like we're still kind of all defining our own stories.
Give me my kiss.
I think we're getting some feedback.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's my son. I'm sorry. I agree with you, Yan. As we, so Q has a bunch of tasks, Ping has a bunch of tasks, and a few others. I think, again, because I'm co-located with quite a few people who are working on this MCORD, I think it's pretty easy for me to swarm with them.
I think that's fine, but I think as a team, all the people that are working on XOS helping out with MCORD needs to understand what work needs to be done in total, right? And then the team then can figure out how they're helping. I don't think it's going to work if each person is asking individually what needs to be worked on. So I'm just recommending that the team meets with Ping and just figure out where the gaps are and what work needs to be done holistically, and then see where the swarm can help out on.
That makes sense. We probably could meet earlier before the Wednesday meeting to do that.
Okay. And then for this, just any testing that needs to be done. I think we had some opportunistic testing we wanted to do. I don't know if that was in the next sprint. We should take that into account. And then let's look at the test framework. We have a lingering MCORD. Strange. That is strange. Yes, unnamed. And does not exist. So let's go down to test framework.
I think this sprint I'll finally have time to look at SornerCube, so I'm going to take that on.
So the next two items are the unit test harness. Matteo and I are both working on 1938. That involves setting up the harness, getting it so that you can run all of the tests with a single command, setting up a Jenkins job, etc. That's broken out into subtasks that are split between us. And then 1993 was to automate generation and model test framework. I set that one's priority to lowest, as it's a best effort task behind all of the other integration work.
Yeah, I will say that for me, all the test framework tasks are best effort. If we have some dead time between the integration, I'll work on that. Otherwise, it will slide to some days.
So we should probably reduce the priority on 1938 as well.
Yeah, sounds correct.
Okay, I just reduced it to low. Okay, I think we're done. Anything else? I think the main thing is let's make sure that we have these stories correct and folks working on things. If you guys have questions on the swarming model, talk to me, and we can always go through a session of what that means. Okay, I think things look okay for us to get started. I'll start the sprints end of today. So if there's anything else that needs to be brought in, I see that there is a build presentation prep for CORD Build. I think that there was work needed by each person, right? So we probably should get one story per person in there for those. I assume no performance brigade work, so I can remove that sprint. If that's the case, so Andy, if you can confirm.
So the performance brigade hasn't had a chance to sync up recently. I know Sai is continuing to build pods and do testing, but yeah.
Okay, so I'm hearing hold off until the brigade has a chance to meet.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start all the other sprints by end of day today. Let's try to get everything in. I don't see test stories, so I assume in terms of closing out the epic, let's make sure the test stories are there associated with the migration. And it sounds like definition of done would be provided at the epic level for Ecord, but we also need it for MCORD, right? So similar to for Ecord meeting with Mark, to discuss the definition of done, we also need something similar with Ping Ping to be able to close out the epic. And I assume this can be done as part of the meeting to discuss what work needed to be done on swarming for MCORD. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.
Cheers,
Bye.
guys. Bye.